Okay. Hi there, and welcome to the Keeping Your Small Business Alive webinar for Friday, April the 3rd. I'm excited to be back with you, and I'm happy to be here with Rachel and Gerardo, who is going to jump in as soon as he gets a chance. You guys have been incredibly busy, I know, trying to get everything in order for the applications for the PPP. So thank you for taking time to be with us, Rachel. And look at that, perfect timing. We were just talking about you, Gerardo. We were like, where is he?
I'm having technical difficulties here.
Oh no.
You're too young for that, Gerardo. You're the youngest of us.
Yeah, like that doesn't make any sense. And you don't, I don't know. Anyway, who knows? I was gonna say something about your family, but I got no clue if you have multiple children on devices. That's always my excuse, so.
No, they're too young.
That's what I thought. Awesome. So thanks to everybody who's jumping in on today's call. And what we're going to do, like we did last week and like we'll be doing in future weeks, is spend a little bit of time giving you guys some updates. We're also going to talk about planning for a little bit longer future because of things that have changed, and give you some tips and tactics for doing that. And then, of course, we want to hear your questions because we want to make sure that you're getting value from this conversation today. So before we jump in, what I would love to do is, if I can get my poll to run, voila, I'm going to launch a little poll because I know that we're not all at the same comfort level with Zoom. And so I just like to understand where people are. So you should see on your screen now a little questionnaire about Zoom. So if you could just share with me your experience in Zoom, because we want to make sure that you guys know how to get to us, how to ask questions and all those good things. And maybe while I'm looking at the poll, Rachel, do you want to talk through kind of who you are, who DreamSpring is, and help people understand if they're in the right place?
Yeah. So DreamSpring is a nonprofit business lender that a lot of you actually have been working with before. Most of the folks who are attending these webinars are our clients, which is cool, but there's other folks as well who are joining. So DreamSpring is a nonprofit lender that looks to help folks out when a bank or credit union can't. I'm the lending team manager, and Gerardo is on our team in Phoenix, joined about a year ago now. And we are doing these webinars with Stephanie because, again, each week there are new challenges that are rolling out for business owners, and for all the folks who are trying to serve them, weekly updates are kind of a necessity at this point. Information's been changing from the SBA as they've been rolling out the different relief products that they have available. And so the whole point of this webinar is to help business owners and some of our partners who help business owners just to navigate what these updates are with the SBA, with other options that could be helpful to them during this time. And specifically this week, we are looking at kind of how to start laying a foundation for a strategy to get through these next few months, because even since last week, we've learned social distancing recommendations, and not even just recommendations, but like regulations have been expanded, to the end of April for Arizona, and likely will go longer. So we're kind of past the shock stage of, okay, like this is a huge challenge, and now we're in the stage where this is our new reality for a while. So we want to give you guys some helpful tools on how to navigate that well and provide those updates that I mentioned in an ever-changing environment that, of resources and tools, especially from the SBA.
Awesome, thank you. And so I've seen what you guys have told us about your experience with Zoom. It looks like we've got people who are mostly comfortable using Zoom. For those of you who have not used Zoom before, there is at the bottom of your screen a black bar. When you move your mouse over it, it will show up. And so there are a couple of things that are of interest there. One of them, which we're going to be using in this webinar, is called Q&A. And depending on what version of Zoom you have, it either looks like a little box with a Q in the middle, or it might look like two little comments next to each other. I'm going to put, I forgot, I'm posting, I can't put a question in. But if someone in the audience would like to put a question in so that folks who don't know where Q&A is can see what Q&A is about, if you do have questions as we're talking through some of the updates and some of these strategies for building a longer term plan, please put them in there and we will do our best to answer as many of those as we can. But we also want to be respectful of your time. And so we are going to do our best to end right at 1 o'clock and make sure that everybody can get back to doing what they need to do. And thank you, Jen, for putting in the Q&A. Awesome. And I'm so glad to see Jen here as well from National Bank of Arizona. Awesome. So I think what we want to do probably initially is help folks understand what the goal of today is, right? And I know Rachel talked a little bit about it, but the 3 things that we want to make sure that you can leave with are a clear idea of an actionable next step. So something you can do right away that's going to help your business survive. And we want you to have that next step so that you can get past the sort of worrying and the concerns that you might have about how you're going to get through this and start taking action. So that's the second thing, to kind of get out of your own head and get into the action taking part. And then the third thing that we want to give you is an opportunity to connect not only with all the resources that we're going to mention today, but also with each other. So towards the end of the webinar, I'll be sharing a link that we're calling Social Capital, thanks to Gerardo, I think that's what we're calling it. And it's a place where you can enter your contact information, one thing that you need from your community, and one thing that you can give to your community. And we really want to help you guys connect with each other so that you can leverage all of the different folks that are out there having these great creative ideas about how to pivot their businesses. And those things might help you either connect to do something together or just inspire you, or there might be a way that you could help somebody else. So that's the 3 things we want you to walk away with today. And as we're talking through these updates, I will probably share my screen at certain points, but if you are having any challenges, you can also put them in the chat and I will show you, whoops. So something that's interesting, you'll have to be sure that you click in the chat, all panelists and attendees, if you want everyone to see it. And so you should just see a little message that says, this is the chat from me, so you know where that is if you're having any trouble. So I think that the first thing that we wanted to talk about, and maybe Rachel and Gerardo, you guys can speak to this too, because you've been living this kind of hour to hour, but we just want to help you guys understand that things are moving very quickly. And even from what we knew last week to what we know now, the world is kind of a different place. And so there's some really practical things that you're going to have to understand about the programs coming out of the SBA, both the EIDL, which is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, and the PPP, which is the Paycheck Protection Program, both of which you've probably heard about. So I think the first thing we want to dive into is that kind of practical tips around how to apply for those things and what may have changed. So I don't know, Rachel, you want to jump in there and share some of your thoughts, and then I can show
absolutely.
what we got.
Yeah, so we did a pretty extensive webinar on diving into all of this yesterday about EIDL, about the Paycheck Protection Program, and then I kid you not, overnight it changed a bit for the PPP loan at least. So we not much has really changed for EIDL. That has been rolled out for a couple of weeks now. And for those of you who are like, oh my gosh, why are they using acronyms? It's the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. That is the, I'm actually, while we're working on this, Gerardo, do you mind getting the link to that application in the chat box, or Stephanie, one of you?
Yes, of course.
Perfect. Thank you. And that program, again, was the one that was kind of most ready from the SBA from the start. You know, they had a variety of things that were passed by Congress, and that was the one that they were like, okay, they had a real application that was live before anything else was. That first application was then updated later to be more streamlined, smoother experience for folks. I know some of the folks who applied for that loan early on, like right when the first application was launched, were maybe kicked out of the application a few times, or maybe it took a couple hours even to like submit it and get through it. It wanted you to give documents right away. That's changed. So if you are one of those people that applied for that a couple weeks ago, the application that is now there is faster. It is a smoother process. It's not asking for documents right now. It takes probably 10 minutes to fill out. And there is a very specific box that you should all be checking. It is in the application, and it mentions, are you interested, I forget the exact term, but something about, are you interested in potentially receiving like up to 10K in advance? That in advance box is another way of saying grant. So the EIDL program has both the loan that you're applying for that will have a follow-up step where you have to give them documents and all of that. They'll reach out to you, the SBA will, and request what they need. But that little box that you check that says that you're interested in that advance is a grant you do not need to repay. It is something that is up to 10K that after they have approved you for it, you will receive it within 3 business days according to them. Please don't hold me to that if they don't do it as quickly as that. We're just giving the best information we have. But that application, again, that link that Gerardo threw in the chat page is a great place to start if you haven't yet. But many of you have done that. Again, this was a few weeks ago. And so now the big update I want to make sure to give you early on today is about the Paycheck Protection Plan. So I'm going to roll through a couple things. Yeah, Gerardo?
I just wanted to add, before we get into the Paycheck Protection Plan, like Rachel said, many of you have applied for the EIDL loan. It is important that if you applied before Monday of this week, to just go ahead and submit the application again. You can use the link that I've uploaded. We're being told by the SBA that this would be a good practice for everybody. Again, if you have not applied, or if you applied prior to Monday of this week, please go ahead and just apply again.
Yep, and make sure to check that little box for the advance up to 10K. And now I am not going to get, again, too crazy into the details here, but I do want to give you an overview of what the Paycheck Protection Program is and the changes that we learned about overnight, just so you have the most up-to-date information and don't feel overwhelmed trying to figure it out on your own, because we can all tell you it's overwhelming to try to figure out on your own. It's why we're here giving you this information now. So for the EIDL loan, which you probably know, it's got a lot of uses of funds, working capital and everything. Like there's a lot more flexibility in terms of what you're looking for there, but the Paycheck Protection Program is specifically to try and cover your payroll costs, and then a few other things like interest payments on your mortgage, your rent payments, utilities can also be bundled in there. But what's important is that if you want to try and get this loan forgiven, what we learned overnight is that 75% of the funds that you get have to be used for payroll and payroll related costs. If you use more than that other 25% for the other uses of funds, then you're potentially not going to get the full thing forgiven. So 75% of that loan that is dispersed to you needs to go towards payroll and payroll related expenses if you want to be eligible for forgiveness. Besides that, there is a change as well in how you give them your monthly average payroll information. Previously, you may have heard that you need to provide information on what your payroll was between like February and June of last year, and then you had to like multiply that by something, and you can forget that. What you need to know as of last night is that they're going to ask you in the application for your average monthly payroll expenses for just an average month from last year. So take your January to December 2019 payroll, divide it by 12, and that's what you'll be entering now. So that's to make it easier for, more seasonal businesses and such. So that's one more change for you. It's actually a simpler thing, I think, than what they had you doing before. So another change is they had previously said that for any portion of the loan that's not forgiven, again, let's just say you end up needing to use more than 25% of the loan for mortgage interest only payments or rent or utilities, that may be something you need to do. You may make the choice at some point, like, I need to do this to stay afloat and I'm okay with having to pay back some of this later. The interest rate that they had said as of yesterday for that loan would be 0.5%. That was changed to 1%. So 1% and this is the part I don't want you to worry about, you just need to know it, that 1% rate is good for 90 days, which means that at the end of that, the government may choose to increase that, but they can't go higher than 4%. So if you're like, oh my gosh, what are they going to do after that 90 days? don't worry, it can't get higher than 4%. It's still a very good rate. So don't be concerned. Again, if you need to at some point make that choice to have some of that loan not be forgiven for the sake of your business surviving, very good rates are still going to be there for you. It's still a pretty short-term loan. It's a 2-year term, so keep that in mind. And then I think the only other change that I wanted to mention, this is something we are actively looking into, so you'll get an update hopefully next week's webinar, but they did make a change that the EIDL grant, if you get that grant of up to 10K, that forgivable grant right there, obviously they're giving you that money, they're not making you pay it back, that will be subtracted from the forgivable amount for your Paycheck Protection Program amount. So let me just give you a simple math equation to make it real to you. If you get a $50,000 loan through the Paycheck Protection Program, then they are going to subtract, and you also get a $10,000 grant through EIDL. They're going to subtract that $10,000 grant from that $50,000, and then you'll still have a little bit left over that actually does roll into a loan. So all that means is that like we're looking into, well, what if you have, we're looking into all the different options on like if maybe you can still have that full amount forgiven, but you need to know at this point, worst case scenario, that if you get both the grant and the Paycheck Protection Program loan, worst case scenario is that you're going to have whatever that grant subtracted from the loan, that amount will be rolled into a loan at some point. That may sound really confusing, but I promise you all that it's still a very good deal. The grant is obviously something that you can make use of for many different purposes. The Paycheck Protection Program, guys, I can't say that phrase, Paycheck Protection Program. I call it like different things in whatever context I'm in, but the PPP program is going to be really helpful for certain uses. So that grant is more flexible than the PPP loan that's dispersed. And then I will switch it over to you, Stephanie, since you unmuted, because that's the end of my updates.
Well, and I think that's great. And I think, so it feels like we've got a few questions, which is terrific. One thing I wanted to share with everybody, if you haven't seen the latest application form, just so you know what it looks like, I dropped that link in the chat. And I thought it might be, because there's a few different questions. Some of them are specific about who is offering these loans. And I know that there's been some of you who bank at maybe national banks have received messages that say, we're not going to be ready, it's not going to happen. As we've suggested to you guys previously, I think your best and first point of contact is your current bank, right? So reach out to your current bank, anyone that you already have a lending relationship with, and talk to them first about when they're going to be up and running with the program before you start looking at other places. Because I think that the other element of this is getting some help navigating, as Rachel was saying, right? Getting some help understanding how it applies to you and how to make the best choices for your business is always going to be better if you have someone to guide you who knows your business and who has a relationship with you. If you don't, then there are numerous folks who are going to be advertising and going to keep talking to you about ways to access the PPP. And so one of the things that we did want to talk about with you guys, which we'll do in just a minute, is some of the things to look out for, right? As you're starting to apply for these loans and you're getting inundated with all this information and you're not really sure, well, wait, so-and-so said I should do this and other people said I should do this. So I think if you guys would find it useful, it might be really interesting to take just 5 seconds, not 5, maybe 30, maybe a full minute, and walk through the application form so you understand what you're being asked to do. So as you can see, the actual application is really 2 pages, right? It's this first page that I'm scrolling through right now, and then a set of certifications. Now, a lot of people are going to focus their time and attention on this piece, right? They're going to be like, okay, well, how do I enter my average monthly payroll? And how do I get all this data I need? And I think those are important. But I think the piece that we really wanted to focus on today is this second page, because a lot of people, I'm concerned, are not going to necessarily read through all of this. And what you need to understand is that every single line that you're initialing here is something that you need to be very clear that you've read and understood. And so one of the things I really want to point out for you is the fact that knowingly making false statements could actually lead to prosecution, right? So when you're filling out this form, if you are not sure about the payroll amounts, it's important to go back and consult your actual financial records and to understand that the number you're entering comes from data that's been entered in your tax return or in your accounting system, as opposed to maybe just thinking, hey, I think it was around $50,000 divided by 12, whatever. So you want to be sure that you're accurately submitting information, and you also want to be sure that you understand how the programs work together, right? And that's the second piece. Oh, it's hard to see here. I don't know why it wants to do that. But you are certifying when you apply for the loan that you haven't taken out another loan. So, no double dipping in terms of trying to use the proceeds for the same thing. Like if you've taken out the EIDL loan, that needs to be for a different set of proceeds than for the PPP. And as Rachel mentioned, the real goal of the PPP program, no, it's PP program, which sounds terrible because the last P is actually for program. But the goal of this particular program is to help you support your employees. Now, I think it'll be interesting as well, Rachel, and I don't know if you guys have gotten guidance on this. This is really focused right now, this application, on people who have employees. There is a program coming out for independent contractors, for sole proprietors and folks like that, but they're not going to be using the same form. Is that correct?
I don't know if they're going to be using the same form or not, but I know that they won't be able to actually submit an application until the 10th of April. And I am getting a lot of questions in a little Q&A box. So I'll real quick just give you a quick update on who I know is already offering this product. So US Bank and Bank of America, I've talked to a couple folks over there, and they both mentioned at this point that they are opening the application up to current clients of theirs. And then I can see that Jen at National Bank of Arizona is taking non-clients as well as current clients. And DreamSpring is actually starting to take applications today for our current clients. So if you have a loan open with DreamSpring, we're gonna be sending out an actual email with all of this information by Monday at the latest, but you can actually call our office starting this afternoon. I'll give you a little insider information here. Obviously, all of this is so new. We're retraining our lending team for all these different parts of the application process that are new and completely different than what we've done before. So we are doing a training that ends around 2 o'clock Arizona time today. And then our intake team will be fully ready for all of the different calls. But if you're very anxious and just kind of like want to get going right after this, you can go to our website to apply. So dreamspring.org, you can just fill out our application, and there's a part where it will ask you, are you applying for this type of loan? So yeah, Roberto. So you don't need to raise your hand, man. You're like a co-host of this.
No, I know. I've been answering some of the questions in the Q&A and the chat to the best of my ability here. I do want to say that a lot of this we will cover, so I don't want to get too in depth with the answers, but just to kind of get everybody on the same page. Like Rachel said, there are banks that are good to go already. Some of them are taking existing clients only, and then some of them are taking clients who are new clients. And I think Genevieve said National Bank of Arizona is taking non-clients as well as current clients. I did have a conversation with US Bank this morning, at least in Arizona. They are also taking non-clients and current clients. So just wanted to update that.
Oh, good.
And then, as Rachel said, you'd have to check in with specific CDFIs individually. But the most important thing to do is, like Stephanie said, to check with your current account holders. But not everybody who has an account with a bank will be able to apply for the PPP through their bank. Those banks are also going to have specific requirements. They may have timelines from which you should have already been a member of the bank. They may have certain types of deposits that they need to see. It's important that if you are not able to apply through them, don't give up. Reach out to one of us. As more information becomes available, we are going to try to get that to you guys so you have somewhere to go.
Yeah, and I know we do have some questions in the Q&A as well. Thanks, Gerardo, for jumping in on some of those. The one that I'd love to hear maybe from you, Rachel, have you guys gotten any guidance around applying through multiple lenders? So you're certifying that you haven't gotten a loan, but should you apply multiple times?
I don't know. I don't know if we've gotten any guidance on that yet. What we are encouraging folks to do is to try to go with the fastest route. So if that's not us, if they've talked to one, their banker and have heard, we can get your application in and answered by tomorrow, awesome. But don't put all your eggs in one basket. Check with your bank, check with DreamSpring if you're a client of ours. I would say you just need to make sure that you are only, Jen just said, I've been told you cannot apply through multiple lenders. Okay, you can still talk to multiple lenders, just make sure that you apply with the one that's going to be the fastest. So try to ask for specific timelines or as specific timelines as possible. And I'm gonna be very honest with all of you, for every lending institution, this is a big disruption in how we normally process things. We're literally making up these processes as we go and working together as well as we can, of course, to, cross-refer folks when appropriate, because we want you to get the best service possible. And at the same time, we're trying to get processes in place that'll be good for you guys. And I kid you not that we got these updates overnight. So a lot of us, business hours were over. We were told to start lending this product today, and we got a bunch of different guidelines and updates last night. So be patient with us, keep in contact with us, make sure you have a couple different options, either your bank and DreamSpring, or again, looking around at who else is offering it, so that you at least can be aware of who's moving the quickest and who has their process in place. So.
One thing, sorry, Stephanie, did you want to say?
No, go ahead.
So there was one question that I wanted to cover. That was a great question about the PPP in terms of guidance for employees who applied for unemployment. How does that fit in with the PPP? What I'm being told by our SBA representative here at DreamSpring is that there shouldn't be an issue so long as those employees are rehired. So there shouldn't be an issue. So that's a great question. The other question I wanted to add is, some in the chat, we were asked, what if we're behind on our current loan? Will this affect our standing with the SBA application process? So for the EIDL loan and the EIDL loan application and the 10K up to 10K advance, those are not being dispersed through the lenders that may be helping you fill out the applications. Those are coming from the SBA. So do not let your current standing with your loan holder prevent you from applying for these funds. And then Stephanie and Rachel, I don't know if you want to add a little bit more to that, but I think there's some confusion because we're helping people apply that maybe we're the ones making the decision for approval. Rachel, I saw you unmuted yourself, so.
Yep, I was just going to mention, I think if someone is behind on an SBA guaranteed loan that they have, I believe that could be an impediment to this. Am I right? Someone else can chime in, but if it's just a normal term loan that you have with DreamSpring or with your bank that's not an SBA guaranteed loan, it's fine if you're behind. It's not going to make any impact on this. But I think if you have an SBA guaranteed loan that you're behind on, it might make a difference.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we can look. I know that there was also guidance that if you do have an existing SBA loan, there's a period of either delay on payment or perhaps forgiveness that is associated with this program.
Yeah, there's actually, I can give you an update on that. See, guys, we're all learning on the fly. If you have an SBA guaranteed loan, that is going to have 6 months of payments paid directly by the government. You do not make those payments. So if you have a DreamSpring loan that has an SBA guarantee on it, or a bank loan or a credit union loan with an SBA guarantee on it, your April through September payments are going to be paid directly by the government. Most DreamSpring loans, some of you are like, oh my gosh, do I have an SBA guarantee? Trust me, you would know if you did, because there was a whole extra set of paperwork and waiting process. So if you have never heard that term of SBA guaranteed loan through your bank or DreamSpring or credit union loan, you don't have an SBA guarantee on it. You would know because it's a significant part of the application process. So.
And for the EIDL loan, yes, you can be in consideration for the grant without having to be approved for the loan. You can be approved for the loan and choose only to take the grant. You can take both. The only restrictions would be use of funds, which we are gonna go over.
And maybe we jump into that. And I know we talked about, we were gonna give a lot of updates, and I think that's great. I do wanna make sure we reserve a little bit of time too, to talk about what you can do in your business besides the loans, because I do think that a lot of people may have had this mindset of, well, this is only gonna last for a few weeks, and I just need to get a loan to kind of get me over the hump, and then everything's gonna be back to normal. And while we all hope that that's gonna be the case in terms of social distancing and things like that, I do think now that we've seen how shelter-in-place orders have come down, it's important for you to start thinking through what this means for your business and how you can reduce, for example, expenses in your business or generate cash in a different way, although these loan programs are also really helpful, so that you have the best shot of really coming out the other end of this situation in a position to thrive. So I don't know if we want to maybe answer the last questions around the PPP and the EIDL and then move into that. What do you guys think?
Let's move into your part, Stephanie, I think, because for the Q&A stuff for EIDL and for PPP, you can reach out to us after. We'll have more information on that. And again, it changes literally every business day. We get more information. So maybe we can have that reserved for the Q&A portion at the end. I just don't want to have us lose out on the other content that's important too. So.
Yeah, well, and I think there's two pieces, right? We really wanted to cover is, excuse me, what can you do in your business? And then we had a few sort of caveats, a few things to look out for as these programs start to roll out that we really wanted to be sure we brought to your attention. So I want to make sure we get a chance to cover those two. Well, and maybe since those are important, maybe we do that. Maybe we do that first if you want. As we were talking in the last few days, we were talking about the fact that this situation is so fluid and that you're probably getting inundated with a lot of information. And so what we wanted to share with you is, first off, understanding the sources of information, really going to people that you already have a relationship with or that you know as you're getting data about the changes to both these programs, but also to other opportunities, right? There's a lot of grant programs out there that are being set up. And what you want to do is have somebody who can maybe help you understand if those are a good fit for you before you invest a lot of time and energy applying necessarily to every program that's out there. I think the other piece that I thought was really important and that Rachel and Gerardo also seconded was that as you start to reach out and as you start to get information about all these new programs, it's possible that you are going to be approached by people who tell you that they can help you. And so it's hard to know, who do you listen to? Who do you perhaps not trust as much? And so we had a few sort of things that we looked at as indicators of whether or not someone is telling you something that's going to be useful for you. And so one of those was, it's always free to apply for these loans. If somebody is telling you that you have to pay them to help you apply or to get you access or to somehow guarantee that you will be approved, generally that's an indicator that they don't have your best interests at heart. Likewise, if somebody is calling you on the phone and asking you to give them social security number, tax ID for your business, any kind of banking information, the SBA is never going to do that, and no lending institution that I know of would do that either in a cold way, right? So if your relationship banker calls you up, like Rachel calls you or Jen calls you or Gerardo calls you, anyone that you've been working with, that's different. If somebody just calls you up and says, hey, I'm with XYZ Bank and I need to make sure we can get you your money, you should probably consider whether you need to have them verify who they are in a different way, right? So I would be careful about those.
Yeah,
And
it's just that dark reality that some people are trying to profit off of this and off of people's anxieties and pretending to be able to offer access that they don't have access. You know, they don't have any special access. So just be wary.
well, and while everyone is trying to help, I think you also need to use the same sort of thought process you would have used when things were normal, which is, if it sounds too good to be true, you probably need to ask some more questions and really understand what's happening. And again, not to scare you, but it's just, we want you guys to be prepared, because there is going to be a lot of information coming out, and there are tons of people who want to help, but it is incumbent on you as a business owner to also use that sort of filter to make sure that you're getting the right information and making the best decisions you can for your business. The other thing that I thought that we talked about that I think is really important is, yes, you will get a lot of outreach, but as you're building these relationships and going through this process, it's important for you to also be proactive in reaching out to folks. So if you're already working with a lender or any creditor, it's important to reach out to them at least once a month, and preferably before you're overdue for a payment. So making sure that you open those lines of communication and try to talk to those folks is going to be very useful in helping you both find a solution that makes sense, as opposed to just ignoring it and hoping that it'll go away. I think the next thing also is trying to stay in touch with current clients if you're trying to manage accounts receivable, for example, or with past clients, just to check in on them and see how they're doing, right? Even if they're not in a position necessarily to purchase products and services right now, maintaining those relationships is also a great way to help you maybe spark some new ideas, but also to help you continue to be a trusted provider for those folks as we move through this situation. And what else did we want to, was there anything else we wanted to cover kind of on the things to look out for or things to be proactive about on the communication side, guys?
I don't have anything else to add. What about you, Gerardo?
No, that all sounds perfect to me.
Yeah, I can't think of anything else to add besides what you mentioned. And when in doubt, again, make sure you have a few folks that you can ask you can always reach out to us. You have our contact information too from, the follow-up emails. We are always looking out for updated information for you. So if you want to see if even a resource is legitimate or not, you can always ask us. We don't want to, again, have you be super suspicious of everything. We just want you to be careful.
Yeah, and again, our goal is simply to make sure that you're making the best decisions you can to help your business survive during this period, and then be prepared to thrive once things, I don't know if we can say they're going to get back to normal, but once things change.
And the new normal, yeah.
Yeah, whatever that looks like. And so maybe in that light, we can spend the next few minutes just talking about some of the plans and some of the strategies that you can start to put in place now that will make that possible for you. What do you think?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Perfect. And so we mentioned talking to your creditors, right? I talked about that a little bit in the things you want to get into the habit of doing. But for a lot of you, if you're in a position where you're not able to make payments on some of the obligations that you have, that could be because you've lost revenues and you're waiting perhaps on the proceeds of some of the programs that we've talked about here today. Your best bet, although it may be uncomfortable, is to reach out to those folks and to try to open those lines of communication, because first off, you're not alone, right? You're certainly not the only person whose business is struggling right now. And second, the sooner you try to work with the person that you owe money to, the more options you're going to have. As time goes on and they haven't heard from you, they're going to be focused on helping the folks that they are hearing from, and they may have less time or less margin, just in terms of how their business is going, to negotiate or to work on some sort of extended payment plan for you. And I know, Rachel, you and Gerardo were talking last week about current clients. Is there anything that you want to mention about that?
Yeah, we're still offering the same payment plans that we have two options. One of them is, and I don't want to get into too much detail because they're always changing as the situation changes.
Everything's changing.
And our goal is always to offer more options, right? And so The more we get a better assessment of what's going on the ground, the better our options can kind of be for our clients. But essentially, we have the ability to either skip a payment with additional interest-only payments, or set up clients on plans for interest-only payments for the foreseeable future. If a client was interested in that, they would just have to contact us. We would get in contact with our payment team. The payment team would either reach out to them or communicate the offer to us, and then we would communicate that to the client. Again, we hope to do more in the future. Hopefully we are able to.
Yeah, and that's where starting that conversation early can really benefit not only you, but also the person that you're talking to, right? Because the more we can understand how many people really need assistance, the better decisions that that creditors can make, right? About how to help, how best to help people. I know a lot of people had rent payments that were due earlier this week, and I have heard that some of those conversations have gone well. Some people are talking about being able to lower current payments in exchange for maybe an extension of their lease, being able to defer some payments. And so I do know that most people want to help, right? It's in no one's interest that your business fails. And so if you're having these conversations, please don't approach them from the standpoint of, oh, well, they're just going to be super hard on me, or they're just going to hold me to the letter of my contract and whatever. I think everybody wants to help you. It's about trying to understand what the best way forward is for you both, right? Because they're facing the same challenges you are, right? Your landlord is also a business owner, or whoever you're working with as a creditor is also a business owner. So just keeping that in mind, I think, is important. And then I think the next piece of the puzzle is starting to think about how you can reduce the costs, your outflows of your business. And one tip that I've been sharing with a lot of people that I've been talking to is to download your last month's transactions. So you can do this off your banking website if you don't have access to your accounting, although I would love it if you all had access to your actual accounting system, even if you have an accountant. And to look at all those expenses and try to understand what they actually drive in your business. Because what I'm noticing with a lot of people is, and you see this with your personal as well, you've got 5 different subscriptions that cost you between $5 and $15 a month, and you don't even really use them anymore. But at some point you thought that was going to be really helpful for you. And so now is the time to start trimming those little things that are eating away at your cash flow, and to start really understanding where the best investment of the precious cash that you have right now is to keeping your business going. And so if you can simply look at everything you spent last month, or for whatever last period you have, you can go through the end of March or whatever, and just almost in like an Excel spreadsheet or a document, just start to say, okay, here's why I need to spend this money, and here's what it does for my business, right? So for example, maintaining your website, right? Clearly keeping your website going and maintaining an online presence for your business can be important if that's the way that you get clients and that's the way that people get to recognize you. However, if you're not necessarily doing some sort of advertising, because you can't have people coming into your facility, then maybe you don't need to be investing heavily in that, right? So just doing that kind of analysis could be really helpful for you in terms of which costs to reduce, and how you're going to measure success going forward. So have you guys, as you've been talking to business owners, have you guys seen any other sort of tactics that they've used to decide what they should keep paying for and what they need to stop paying for?
I would actually love to open that up to like the chat section really quick. I know that that's a little awkward. Sorry if there's like a little silence as folks are typing, but if you have anything that you've been doing for your business that has, successfully cut costs for the next few months, just creative ways that you've done that, put that in the chat function. For us, honestly, most of our time in the last 2 weeks has been spent answering questions about the SBA options that are out there. So I also want to make a real quick plug while folks are maybe, sharing something in the chat section that a way that they've successfully cut down on expenses for the next few months, or just sort of like adjusted something to save them money. I want to make a quick plug for our Small Business Development Center, which has offices in both, all over Arizona, but there's several in the Phoenix metro area. There are there's a great one down here in Tucson. Even though they can't meet with you in person at their offices, they are still working remotely. I actually see one of the Tucson SBDC folks, Rick Loveland, is on this call today. So if you are looking for help and going through your expenses and, just trying to adjust at cash flow for the next few months and you don't know where to start, I'd really recommend too that you reach out to one of those folks, and you can just Google them, SBDC Arizona, and you can find the nearest location. You can get their email addresses there and just reach out to them, or reach out to us and we'll connect you. Because if you don't know where to start and this seems like an overwhelming process, besides obviously us sharing stuff here, you can get that one-on-one attention from them. They've gotten increased funding actually from the CARES Act so that they can continue to offer, this level of assistance.
Yeah, and if you do feel like you could use a template or something like that and you're having trouble accessing other resources, I'm also happy to, help you out, reach out to me. I've got some stuff that I've used for other people as well. But I think that I think you're right. The SBDC is a great place to start. I do know that they're like every other SBA function these days. I think they're keeping themselves pretty busy, but they are there to help, and so are we. So I like that idea. I do think that as we're looking at this not being a question of weeks, but a question of months, people are asking me, well, what does that mean? Like, do I need to plan through, May? Do I need to look at June? And what I've been hearing and what I'm trying to share with people is that you need to probably look at what it's going to take to manage through September of this year. And for some of the high growth companies that I work with, a lot of the folks who make investments there are suggesting that you look to plan through the end of the year. Like, how can you hold on to enough cash to make sure that you can survive through the end of the year?
So if you were thinking like, oh, well, I have enough like in my reserves to get through the end of June, like that's great. But like I mentioned in our last webinar, like it's much easier to get financing before you are in dire need. And so sit down with your, with someone from the SBDC, from your bookkeeper, your network, and look at, like Stephanie just mentioned, not just through the end of June. Maybe the end of June, things will be looking a lot more normal, or, things will start to be livening up again, but it's going to take some time for us to really make up all that's been lost economically in the last just month. So plan, I had actually proposed to like having a couple different plans where like, okay, to not overwhelm yourself, like plan through the end of June, and then look at, okay, I'm going to plan through the end of September, kind of take it in steps so that you are, not, trying to plan out the rest of your business's life right now. You're just looking at the next few months, knowing that it's going to be a long recovery from all of us. And it's going to be a long time before we have a more stable kind of sense of normal again. So if you are on the fence about looking for a loan or a grant, honestly, do it. Especially if it's a forgivable loan, do it. There are good options right now that are going to go away. The money that has been allocated by Congress is not infinite. And so if you've been on the fence, it does not hurt to apply. It doesn't, if you get an offer and you end up not needing all of it, that's okay too. Just get your foot in the door now. Plan ahead for the next 3 to 6 months. Don't just think, oh, I've weathered it so far and I think I can squeak on by. You don't want to end up in that place where you wish you could go back in time 3 months ago and find some help through the different options that are out there.
Yeah, and I do want to say that I think one of the things to keep in mind is that the programs we've talked about are just part of the puzzle, right? So one of the things that you can do to help your business is obviously apply for these loans and make sure that you're maximizing your chances of using them efficiently, right? So that means also thinking through, where are most of my expenses coming from, right? Because if you have payroll as a big expense, then a big chunk of what you need could be covered through PPP. But if you don't necessarily have a big payroll, perhaps using the EIDL loan would also be a really good way to help you cover some of those costs, even though those are not 100% forgivable. And so don't let the fact that it's not 100% forgivable or that it's not exactly perfect deter you from considering that as an option, because I do think you've got a very generous set of options right now. Like, frankly, I've worked in finance my whole career, and I've never seen anything that's this generous in terms of really doing everything we can to try to help small businesses survive so that we can thrive at the end. I do think the other thing that you want to think about, and maybe this will be our kind of last topic for today, last tip for today, is pivoting your business, right? And so a lot of people have kind of been in the mode where they're like, well, what I need to do is just kind of hold out until the same source of revenue I had before comes back. And while that may be true, you ought to start to think, who else could use the service or product that I already provide? And we've seen a lot of examples of folks doing this successfully. Or is there something relatively close to what I'm already doing that I could do for the same people I already help in the current conditions, right? So good example of that second one is restaurants that have now moved to delivery, right? Doesn't make up all of their revenues, but it certainly can help. And I do think that those folks who are able to make that transition successfully are going to continue to have some steady revenues coming in, as opposed to folks who maybe were like, well, I don't really know how to make delivery work, and I'm not really sure how that might help my business. And so this might be a time to explore those options that maybe you didn't look at before because you thought it was a much shorter term situation. Rachel, have you and Gerardo seen anybody doing that, or had any tips for folks that are successfully doing that?
Do you want to start, Gerardo? Do you want me to?
You can start.
Sure. So the classic example, but one that I know that some of our clients are doing successfully at this point, is for food, for different food related industry businesses, like restaurants, coffee shops, bakeries, having the takeout option, takeout and delivery being the focus of how they generate their revenue instead of, the sit down option that doesn't exist anymore, has been working for some folks. They've had to reduce hours, reduce their menu items, but it's worked. Some preschools, we have actually done a lot of preschool loans over our organization's life. Some like preschools even are starting to do some virtual content for the kids, helping their parents figure out what on earth to do with them during the day as they're trying to work from home often. Or, I think some preschools even have successfully pivoted to being preschools for like essential workers. So there are some folks like police officers, healthcare workers, even grocery store workers that, are deemed essential right now. They still need to have childcare. And so some preschools have looked into becoming, certified to do that. So those are options where, again, in the past, they would have never thought of pivoting to that model, but it has worked for them. Gerardo, do you have any pivots from clients you've talked to?
Yeah, I do actually. And so I think sometimes when we talk about pivots, we can feel overwhelmed because we think there's so much work that goes into pivots. It's changing a business model or changing a method of delivery for your service. So I actually have two examples, one where that is true and one where that is not the case. A lot of my clients have built-in deferred payment methods for their customers. So if they're helping with web design or platform assistance, or even any type of coaching or mentoring, a lot of my clients have built in a deferred payment plan similar to what you would get if you took out a loan, right, where you don't have to make a payment for the first 30 days, giving their clients the opportunity to have a little breathing room before their payment is due. So delivering services first and then waiting on payment. I know that's not realistic for a lot of businesses, but if you are in graphic design or something of that nature, that might be something you can do, especially if you have already purchased equipment that you just need to use, right? The second thing that my clients are doing that I think is more realistic and is kind of interesting is they're not pivoting their business model at all, but they're expounding and advertising on services that they're already giving that they never would have phrased their method of delivery that way prior to Corona. So pest control. Most of them, if they spray outside your house, they don't go in your house anyway. And they never before Corona would ever have said, we'll make sure to stay, 12 feet away from people at all times, blah, 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 blah. But it's all about marketing, right? So if you are delivering the same services, but you are able to say that you are going to show up prior to anybody waking up, to make sure to leave any type of invoice at the door, no contact will be necessary, I'll put the invoice in a plastic bag, we'll spray around the house and leave, any kind of business payments will be taken over the phone. Like all that stuff they were doing before, all they're doing is pointing it out now. And sometimes it's something that simple that can keep your business retention going. So I thought that was creative. Landscapers, obviously, most of us aren't high-fiving and hugging our landscapers. But them pointing out that you don't have to high-five them and hug them and stuff like that when they get to the door, it's just offering that peace of mind, and is keeping a lot of them pretty much booked for the rest of the month, which is helping them make payroll.
Yeah, and I think of a really funny example for me, guys. I recently, I was working from home most of the time before this anyways. That's the model that DreamSpring has followed, is trying to have loan officers all around the communities that we serve, and we work from home, but also we go to our businesses' offices and we go around town to meet with folks. And so working from home was not a challenge for me, but now I'm like at home. So I got someone knocked on the door the other day, and I went to go and see who it was. And it was someone who was going door to door offering to weed. Like, he was doing landscaping stuff, just really basic landscaping stuff. And I need to be honest, guys, the front yard very much needed to be weeded. And so he saw me or saw my house and was like, all right, I'm gonna go there. And so I've never paid to have landscaping done in my life, because that was something my parents were like, well, if you can do it, you do it. You don't pay someone else to. So I had never, ever gone out of my way to find a landscaper or anything to do stuff that I could do on my own typically. But this guy came in, knocked on my door, and we negotiated a price, and he weeded the front yard. It's the first time I've ever used that type of business. I never had done it before, but someone came to the door. I've been insanely busy from this and stressed out. And so I was like, you know what, if I can get some work to him, and I can maybe, have a little more time on my plate that, my free time won't be spent weeding my front yard, this is worth it to me right now. And so I ended up supporting a business I had never sought out before, just because they are doing things in a different way now. So it's a funny little example, but it worked. He got more business, and I'm not weeding the yard, so it's a win-win situation.
Yeah, and I know we're very close to time, so I want to be respectful, but Greg, who's with us today, had a pivot that he shared, which is they sell corporate apparel, right? They sell promotional items. And what they did is they pivoted to PPE, right? So personal protective equipment for healthcare workers. And they've already gotten some orders. So I do think sometimes when we think pivot, to Gerardo's point, we also think that, I have to start completely over because there's no demand for what I'm pivoting to. And the reality is, if you're pivoting to something that people already know they need, as is the case with PPE, for example, it could be really easy. All you have to do is get in contact with the people who've already identified themselves as needing it and saying, I can help you. And so then you're not really starting over in terms of trying to sell something to someone. You're just fulfilling a need, to Rachel's point too, that they already have and just didn't know you were available to satisfy. So I think, and maybe what we can do next week, if you guys would like, is we can spend more time brainstorming these. We can share more of these pivots that we've seen, in addition to sharing some other information that we didn't necessarily get to today, and updating you about the programs. As we wrap up, the one thing I'm going to do is drop, I know I mentioned that there was a way for you guys to connect to each other through this social capital worksheet. So I dropped the link in the chat. If you feel like there is something that you could add to the community, or there is something that you need from the community, please, it takes 5 seconds. It's like 5 columns, and it will be a great way for you guys to stay connected to each other. And I want to say thank you to Marissa, who made a suggestion that we add a tab for resources in that particular worksheet. So I'm happy to do that. I would say though that Rachel and Gerardo at DreamSpring also have a really nice resource page, which we'll be sending out in the follow-up email. I will follow up with you guys by email and send you, I think last time, yeah, we're gonna have the recording up on that page. Is that right, Rachel?
Yeah, we have other recordings for the trainings that we do every week on our DreamSpring website. So if you missed last week's training, or if you want to attend, if you want to have a friend attend this week's training. And my name's not Rachel. I'm sorry, Rachel.
You sure? No, Gerardo, go for it. I just put the link in the chat.
Okay, great. So thank you guys very much for being with us. And I think we got to all the questions, but if we did not, like I said, I'll be following up. We'll be following up with an email. And if you do need anything from us, of course, we're here to help. So please feel free to reply directly to the email. It comes directly to us. It's not some, email, whatever machine. And if there are things that you want to be sure that we talk about next week, things that would be of service to you, please send those to us by email. And I asked this last week, we're assuming that this would be helpful. Can you guys just give us a yes in the chat if this is helpful and if you would like us to continue meeting at this virtual lunch and learn on Fridays, because we want it to be of service to you.
Yep, we won't be offended. There's like a million and a half webinars.
And if it's not
happening.
helpful, then yeah, exactly. Like you don't need 25 more webinars in your life. So you can say no in the chat too, if it's not helpful. Oh boy. So I'm scared because there's silence. I don't know what that means.
Silence, does that mean the jury's still out?
Well, Catherine says yes, so thank you,
Oh,
Catherine. That's good to hear. Well, then I would ask you, as we send out the email. Oh, well, thank you guys. Okay, so we're seeing some yeses come in now. Okay.
We just want to, we want to get feedback, because if there are ways that we can, adjust it to be more helpful, great. And if we get to that point where we're no longer giving out information that you're not hearing from other places, we'd want to know that too.
Right. And I do think, we'd love to find a way to get you guys engaged. And so if there are other, if having you send the questions ahead of time would be easier or something like that, if you've got suggestions for how to make this more useful for you, that's what we want, right? So please don't hesitate to communicate with us by email. Okay, so that's a great question. Where can we keep all the questions others ask centrally with the answers when they come available? So I will tell you that I can probably find the chat, and I think that'll have all the questions in it so that we could find a place to post that. So I don't have a total answer for you, but we'll find a way to do it. And we'll make that available to everybody. And again, the recording, you'll always have access to, so you can, if you kind of remember where the conversation went, you can always find it through the recording as well. So I know we're a little bit over time, and I know you guys are probably wanting to shift focus and move into something else. And I know Rachel and Gerardo have to get back to work. So I'll shut it down now and say thank you very much. And hopefully we'll see you guys next week. And if there is anything we can do for you between now and then, don't hesitate to ask. We are here for that. And here's to keeping your small business alive, because I think this is the best thing that we can all do to contribute to getting through the challenging situation that we're facing right now. Rachel, Gerardo.
Good luck, guys. Stay safe.
Thank you all.